Only 1% of people can consciously manipulate quantum energy. Not because they are chosen by chance, not because they worked harder, and not because they learned a secret technique. It is because they recognized something that was always true. This recognition is not intellectual. It does not arrive through study or repetition. It arrives as a quiet remembering of what you are beneath conditioning, beneath effort, beneath the identity that believes reality is something happening outside of you. Most people attempt to influence the world as if it were separate from them. They push, they hope, they visualize, they repeat words, and they wait for proof. The 1% does none of this. They do not try to control the field. They recognize themselves as part of it. This changes everything. The moment this recognition stabilizes, reality begins responding differently, not because reality has changed, but because perception has. Quantum energy does not respond to desire. It responds to coherence. It does not answer effort. It mirrors identity. When identity is fragmented, the field appears chaotic. When identity is whole, the field becomes responsive. This is why only a small percentage experience consistent alignment. It is not about morality, worth, or intelligence. It is about clarity of self-recognition. If you are hearing this clearly, it is not by accident. Recognition always precedes activation. You cannot manipulate what you do not feel yourself to be part of. The 1% does not see themselves as a body attempting to influence energy. They experience themselves as awareness moving within itself. From that position, manipulation is the wrong word. Alignment is closer. Resonance is closer. Allowing is closer. This recognition often arrives early in life as a sense of being different, more sensitive, more affected by environments, emotions, and unspoken currents. Many were taught to suppress this sensitivity, to harden, to normalize. But sensitivity was never a flaw. It was feedback. It was the nervous system's ability to read the field with precision. Those who never fully lost this sensitivity are the ones who later recognize how reality actually works. The 1% is not louder, more confident, or more dominant. They are often quieter. They feel first, then move. They notice contraction and expansion within themselves and respect it as guidance. They do not chase outcomes. They stabilize states. They do not ask reality for permission. They recognize when something is already aligned and allow it to unfold. This is not about becoming special. It is about remembering what was buried under survival, comparison, and effort. The moment you stop trying to become someone who can manipulate quantum energy, and instead recognize that consciousness itself is the medium through which all response happens, the relationship with reality changes. You are not being introduced to a new idea. You are being reminded of something familiar. If this feels calm rather than exciting, heavy rather than euphoric, quiet rather than dramatic, that is a sign of truth landing. Recognition does not create fireworks. It creates stillness. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and remain within it. Most minds cannot access the quantum field because they are not experiencing themselves as whole. Their identity is fragmented, split between who they think they must be to survive and what they actually feel beneath that role. Fragmentation creates noise. Noise disrupts coherence. And without coherence, the field appears distant, unresponsive, or random. This has nothing to do with intelligence. Some of the sharpest analytical minds remain completely disconnected from quantum responsiveness. Thought alone cannot interface with the field. The field does not respond to conclusions, beliefs, or affirmations. It responds to the emotional and perceptual state from which thought arises. When perception is shaped by fear, urgency, or lack, the signal sent is incoherent by default. Survival-based perception narrows awareness. It trains the mind to scan for threat, scarcity, and control points. From that position, reality is experienced as something that must be managed, predicted, or forced into compliance. The nervous system becomes dominant, reactive, and defensive. In this state, consciousness collapses into linear cause and effect. The field is no longer felt as alive or responsive, only as something to struggle against. This is why so many people believe reality is hard, slow, or unfair. They are not wrong within their state of perception. Reality mirrors inner state, not desire. A contracted identity produces a contracted world. The field is still responding, but it is responding accurately to incoherence. Most people mistake this feedback for punishment or bad luck, when it is simply reflection. Another major barrier is the habit of externalizing power. When someone believes energy exists outside of them, they unconsciously place themselves beneath it. They wait for permission, signs, or conditions to change before they allow themselves to feel different. This waiting reinforces separation. The field then appears unreachable, mystical, or reserved for others. Externalizing power also creates dependency on methods. Techniques, rituals, repetitions, and systems are adopted as substitutes for recognition. While these can temporarily regulate emotion, they do not resolve fragmentation. Without identity coherence, techniques become exhausting. The individual keeps trying to reach the field, unaware that the distance they feel is being generated internally. Emotional incoherence deepens this disconnect. When emotions are judged, suppressed, or overridden, the body loses its role as a sensing instrument. Emotion is not an obstacle to clarity. It is clarity. When emotion is ignored, guidance is lost. The individual moves without feedback, then wonders why reality does not respond cleanly. The majority is not locked out of the field. They are simply looking at it from the wrong position. They are trying to influence what they believe they are not part of. This creates effort without resonance. Motion without movement. Action without alignment. Access does not require learning something new. It requires releasing the identity that believes power is elsewhere. When perception shifts from survival to presence, from control to coherence, the field stops feeling distant. It stops feeling abstract. It begins to feel immediate, intimate, and responsive. This is not a failure of humanity. It is a phase of perception. And perception can change the moment identity relaxes its grip. Sensitivity was never meant to be corrected. It was meant to be refined. Those who can interact with the quantum field do so because they feel more, not less. Feeling is not distraction. Feeling is perception. The deeper the sensitivity, the finer the feedback received from reality itself. Most people are taught early to numb this capacity. They are told they are too emotional, too reactive, too affected by their surroundings. Over time, they learn to override sensation with thought, to suppress emotional signals in favor of control. What is lost in this process is not weakness, but access. When sensitivity is shut down, the channel through which the field communicates is muted. The quantum field does not speak in language. It does not communicate through logic or argument. It communicates through sensation, mood, and subtle shifts in inner state. Sensitivity is the ability to notice these shifts before they become external events. It is the difference between hearing a whisper and waiting for a shout. Those with heightened sensitivity often feel overwhelmed in chaotic environments. They absorb emotional atmospheres, unspoken tension, and underlying currents that others ignore. This is not a flaw of poor boundaries. It is a sign of an unfiltered instrument. Without understanding, this can feel like a burden. With recognition, it becomes a compass. Suppression blocks access because it disconnects awareness from the body's intelligence. The body is not separate from consciousness. It is consciousness made tactile. When emotion is dismissed or controlled prematurely, information is lost. The field is still responding, but the individual can no longer feel how or why. Sensitivity allows you to notice expansion and contraction before thought explains it. There is a felt sense of ease when something aligns, and a subtle tightening when it does not. This guidance is immediate. It does not require justification. It does not ask for permission. It simply signals. Those who lack access to the field are not insensitive by nature. They have simply learned to distrust their own sensing. They prioritize certainty over clarity. They wait for external validation instead of internal resonance. Over time, this creates delay, confusion, and a sense that reality is opaque. The 1% retains or reclaims sensitivity without being consumed by it. They do not dramatize emotion, nor do they suppress it. They observe it. They allow sensation to inform direction without needing to label or fix it. This creates a feedback loop of increasing precision. The more sensation is trusted, the clearer it becomes. Sensitivity also dissolves the illusion of separation. When you feel deeply, you notice that your internal state shifts in response to environments, people, and unseen dynamics. This reveals that nothing is truly isolated. The field is continuous. Sensitivity is how you feel that continuity directly. This is why forcing sensitivity off never produces power. It produces numbness. And numbness cannot perceive alignment. Without perception, there is no conscious interaction, only reaction. You do not need to become sensitive. You need to stop resisting what you already feel. The gateway is not ahead of you. It is within your immediate experience, waiting to be acknowledged. When sensitivity is honored rather than feared, the field stops feeling abstract. It begins to feel personal, responsive, and alive. Quantum energy does not respond to effort. It responds to resonance. This distinction is subtle, yet it is the dividing line between those who struggle endlessly and those who move with apparent ease. Effort assumes separation. Resonance assumes unity. The field does not need to be convinced, persuaded, or activated. It is already active. What changes is the state from which you are perceiving it. Coherence is the primary requirement. Coherence means that what you feel, what you perceive, and what you identify as are not in conflict. When these layers align, the signal becomes clean. When they contradict each other, the signal fractures. The field always responds, but it responds accurately. Confusion receives confusion. Stability receives clarity. Presence is what allows coherence to stabilize. The field does not operate across imagined futures or rehearsed pasts. It responds in the present moment because the present moment is where identity is active. When attention drifts into anticipation, worry, or mental simulation, coherence dissolves. The signal weakens not because something went wrong, but because attention left the point of contact. Many people attempt to influence reality through mental repetition. They say the right words while feeling the opposite state internally. This creates cancellation. The field does not respond to the words. It responds to the underlying emotional and perceptual tone. Saying something while feeling misaligned sends mixed information. Mixed information produces inconsistent results. Identity-based response is the deepest layer. The field does not ask what you want. It reflects who you are being. Identity is not a label or a role. It is the stabilized sense of self you return to when nothing is happening. This baseline state sets the parameters of what can enter your experience. When identity shifts, the range of available outcomes shifts with it. This is why sudden changes in reality often occur after long periods of stillness. Identity reorganizes quietly before the environment does. From the outside, it appears random. From within, it feels inevitable. The field is not catching up. It is responding to a signal that finally stabilized. Trying harder does not strengthen the signal. It distorts it. Control introduces tension. Tension introduces noise. Noise reduces clarity. Allowing, on the other hand, is not passive. It is precise. It is the absence of internal contradiction. When you are not arguing with your own state, the field receives a clean instruction without effort. The 1% does not wait for motivation or certainty. They wait for coherence. When coherence is present, action flows naturally. When it is absent, they pause. This pause is not avoidance. It is calibration. Acting without coherence only reinforces misalignment. The field responds instantly, but manifestation appears delayed because physical systems move more slowly than consciousness. This delay tempts the mind to interfere. Interference destabilizes the signal. Those who understand response mechanics allow the delay without collapsing trust. This is not belief. It is mechanics. The field does not reward faith. It mirrors state. If this clarification has landed with clarity, like the video now as a confirmation that this recognition has landed. Emotion is not something that happens to you after reality unfolds. Emotion is what reality responds to before it takes form. Most people experience emotion as a consequence, a reaction to events they believe are already fixed. This misunderstanding reverses the actual order of creation and keeps them perpetually behind their own experience. Emotion functions as instruction because it is the body's immediate translation of coherence or incoherence. It arises before thought explains, before language labels, before logic justifies. The field reads this signal instantly. Not the story attached to it, not the reason given for it, but the raw state itself. Expansion is the sensation of alignment. It feels like openness, ease, lightness, or quiet clarity. It does not need excitement to be valid. Often it is subtle. A sense of rightness without urgency. When expansion is present, identity and direction are congruent. The field receives a clean instruction because there is no internal contradiction. Contraction is the sensation of misalignment. It appears as tightness, heaviness, frustration, resistance, or emotional drag. This is not failure. It is feedback. Contraction is the body signaling that the current thought, choice, or identity orientation is not coherent with the deeper self. The field is not punishing. It is reflecting. The problem begins when emotion is judged. Expansion is labeled good. Contraction is labeled bad. From this judgment, suppression emerges. People attempt to override contraction with positivity, discipline, or denial. This creates internal conflict. One part of the system signals misalignment while another insists on proceeding anyway. The instruction sent becomes distorted. Emotion does not need to be fixed to be useful. It needs to be felt accurately. The moment emotion is allowed without resistance, its informational value becomes clear. Contraction often dissolves on its own when it is not argued with. Expansion stabilizes when it is not clung to. Those who interact fluently with the field do not chase good emotions or avoid uncomfortable ones. They listen. They understand that emotion is a compass, not a verdict. It does not dictate action. It informs direction. Ignoring it leads to repeated friction. Honoring it refines movement. Emotion is also faster than thought. By the time the mind constructs a narrative, the field has already responded to the underlying state. This is why people often say they knew something felt wrong before it happened, or felt right without being able to explain why. That knowing was emotional, not intellectual. When emotion is treated as instruction rather than reaction, responsibility shifts inward without blame. You stop arguing with circumstances and start reading your own state. Reality becomes less personal and more precise. Events are no longer interpreted as attacks or rewards, but as mirrors. Expansion does not guarantee immediate results. Contraction does not guarantee delay. These sensations are not promises. They are signals. The skill is not controlling emotion, but staying present with it long enough to receive the information it carries. The field is always listening. Emotion is always speaking. When you stop correcting the signal and start honoring it, interaction becomes effortless. Not because reality bends to your will, but because you are no longer sending mixed instructions. Forcing is the most common way people disconnect themselves from quantum flow. It feels active, responsible, and disciplined, yet it produces the opposite of what is intended. Forcing assumes that reality must be pushed into alignment. This assumption introduces resistance before anything even moves. Control collapses responsiveness because it originates from mistrust. When you try to control an outcome, you are signaling that the present state is insufficient or unsafe. The field does not respond to the goal you are aiming for. It responds to the state you are standing in while aiming. A state of mistrust sends a fragmented signal, no matter how clear the intention sounds in language. Effort-based intention is rooted in urgency. Urgency narrows perception. It creates fixation on result while disconnecting from the feedback available now. The body tightens. Attention tunnels. Sensitivity dulls. This contraction is immediately read by the field as incoherence. The response you receive matches that contraction, often appearing as delay, complication, or resistance. This is why trying harder often produces diminishing returns. Each increase in effort introduces more tension. More tension increases internal contradiction. One part of the system wants control, another feels misaligned, and a third is watching for proof. The instruction sent becomes noisy. The field mirrors that noise faithfully. Allowing is not passive. It is the absence of internal opposition. Calm receptivity stabilizes flow because it removes contradiction from the signal. When you are not trying to escape the present moment, identity settles. When identity settles, coherence forms naturally. The field responds not because you asked louder, but because you stopped interfering. Many confuse allowing with giving up. They believe that without force, nothing moves. In reality, forcing is what stalls movement. Allowing creates space for the next aligned action to arise without strain. Action taken from coherence feels obvious, timely, and precise. Action taken from forcing feels heavy, rushed, and uncertain. Control also locks perception into a single outcome. When that outcome is fixated on, alternative pathways are ignored. The field communicates through options, timing, and subtle redirections. Forcing blinds you to these signals. Allowing keeps perception wide enough to notice them. Calm receptivity does not mean you feel peaceful at all times. It means you are not arguing with your current state. Even discomfort can be allowed. The difference is that allowed discomfort informs rather than blocks. Forced positivity silences feedback. Allowed sensation refines direction. Those who maintain quantum flow do not measure progress by visible movement alone. They sense internal stability first. When stability is present, they trust movement will follow. When it is absent, they pause without self-judgment. This pause preserves the signal instead of degrading it. Forcing is effort applied against feedback. Allowing is responsiveness to feedback. One creates friction. The other creates flow. This distinction is not philosophical. It is mechanical. If this distinction is becoming clear to you, comment with the words, "I am ready," to anchor this timeline. Before anything can be understood about quantum interaction, one assumption must dissolve. The assumption that you are a separate entity attempting to influence an external field. This assumption is the source of effort, confusion, and delay. The shift that defines the 1% is not learning how to influence reality, but recognizing that there is no boundary where influence would even occur. You do not stand outside the field and send signals into it. You exist as the field experiencing itself from a particular point of perception. Consciousness is not located in the body as a generator. The body is located within consciousness as an interface. When this is recognized, the entire framework of effort collapses. Influence implies distance. It implies a sender and a receiver. That model belongs to linear systems, not quantum ones. In quantum reality, observer and observed arise together. What you call reality is not something you act upon. It is something that reorganizes as your state reorganizes. There is no command being issued. There is only resonance stabilizing. This is why attempts to manipulate from a place of separation fail. They are based on a false premise. Trying to influence the field is like trying to move water while forgetting you are submerged in it. Every movement you make is already part of the medium. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be forced. When identity relaxes into this recognition, a subtle authority emerges. Not dominance. Not control. Authority as in alignment. Decisions feel simpler. Reactions soften. There is less urgency to prove, change, or correct. The sense of needing to manage reality dissolves because the idea of an external reality dissolves with it. This does not mean nothing matters. It means everything is closer than you thought. The field is not responding to your thoughts as commands. It is responding to your state as structure. Your emotional tone, your sense of self, your level of coherence are not influencing variables. They are the configuration through which reality is appearing. Separation creates effort because it creates distance. Unity removes effort because there is nowhere to push from and nowhere to push toward. Action still happens. Choices still occur. But they arise from clarity rather than strain. From recognition rather than ambition. Those who live from this understanding often struggle to explain it, because language itself is built on separation. Words divide subject and object. Experience does not. This is why the recognition feels simple rather than impressive. It does not add knowledge. It removes distortion. You are not inside reality. Reality is appearing inside awareness. When this stabilizes, fear loses its leverage. Control loses its appeal. Forcing loses its logic. What remains is responsiveness. A fluid adjustment between inner state and outer expression that happens without calculation. This is also why the 1% appears calm in situations where others panic. They are not braver. They are not detached. They are simply not interpreting events as something happening to them from outside. They are experiencing movement within a unified system. Once this separation dissolves, there is nothing to influence and no one to do the influencing. There is only coherence clarifying itself. From that position, interaction with the quantum field stops being a skill and becomes a natural condition of being. Timelines are not built through effort. They are selected through identity. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of quantum interaction, because action is visible while identity is not. Most people assume that doing more creates more outcomes. In reality, doing only expresses what identity has already stabilized. A timeline is not a future you move toward. It is a version of reality that becomes accessible when your sense of self matches its frequency. Countless versions of events exist simultaneously, but only one responds at a time. The responding version is not chosen by desire. It is chosen by who you consistently experience yourself to be. Identity is not personality. It is not preference. It is the baseline state you return to when nothing is demanded of you. It is how you expect life to treat you. It is how you relate to uncertainty. It is the emotional posture you occupy when you are not performing or striving. This posture acts as a selector switch. When identity is unstable, timelines flicker. Moments of alignment appear and disappear. Progress feels inconsistent. One day things flow, the next day they resist. This is not randomness. It is identity shifting back and forth between states that correspond to different outcomes. The field responds accurately to each shift. Action cannot override identity. Action taken from a misaligned identity reinforces that identity. Action taken from a coherent identity amplifies coherence. This is why two people can take identical actions and receive completely different results. The difference is not strategy. It is state. Self-concept determines what feels normal. And what feels normal determines what is allowed to persist. When success, ease, or stability feels unfamiliar, it cannot stabilize. It may appear briefly, then dissolve. The system rejects what the identity does not recognize as belonging. This is why forcing new outcomes without addressing identity leads to exhaustion. The individual keeps trying to hold a timeline they are not yet oriented to. The tension between effort and self-concept eventually collapses the result. The field does not resist. Identity does. Selecting a new timeline does not require visualization or affirmation. It requires recognition. Recognition that you are no longer the person who relates to reality in the old way. This recognition is subtle. It does not announce itself. It shows up as changed reactions, different emotional baselines, and a quiet shift in expectation. When identity stabilizes, the timeline locks in. Circumstances reorganize without dramatic intervention. People, opportunities, and events align without being chased. This can feel unsettling to the mind because it lacks the familiar sense of control. Yet it feels calm to the body because coherence has been achieved. Timelines do not respond to wanting. They respond to being. The field is not asking what you desire. It is responding to what you assume is possible for someone like you. When that assumption changes, the response changes automatically. You do not move through time to reach a future. You experience time rearranging around a stabilized identity. When this is understood, effort falls away. Action becomes expression rather than attempt. And reality begins to reflect consistency instead of contrast. Waiting is not absence of movement. It is a form of communication. When the field does not immediately reorganize, it is not withholding. It is signaling. Most people misinterpret this signal because they equate movement with progress and stillness with failure. In doing so, they destabilize the very coherence they need. A pause often indicates that identity has shifted faster than the environment can adjust. Consciousness reorganizes instantly. Physical systems do not. This delay is not resistance. It is translation. The field is aligning variables, timing, and pathways that the mind cannot see from within urgency. Patience preserves coherence because it maintains the signal without distortion. When you remain neutral during a pause, identity stays stable. When identity stays stable, the timeline remains selected. Nothing is lost during waiting. Everything is being calibrated. Impatience, on the other hand, introduces doubt. Doubt fractures identity. The moment you question whether alignment is working, you shift into a different state. The field responds immediately to that shift. The delay you feared becomes reinforced, not because the field is testing you, but because the signal changed. Waiting becomes painful only when it is interpreted as denial. The discomfort does not come from stillness itself, but from resistance to it. The mind wants reassurance. It wants signs, movement, confirmation. But seeking confirmation is itself a signal of instability. It tells the field that identity has not yet settled. Those who understand quantum responsiveness treat waiting as active alignment. They do not fill the pause with effort. They do not manufacture action to feel productive. They listen. They observe subtle shifts in perception, emotion, and expectation. These shifts indicate that the system is still reorganizing. Non-reaction is a form of mastery. It keeps the channel clear. When nothing is happening externally, there is still information available internally. Sensation, mood, and intuition continue to adjust. This is where refinement occurs. Acting too soon interrupts this process. Many timelines collapse not because alignment was wrong, but because impatience destabilized it at the final stage. The individual could not tolerate the quiet. They interpreted silence as failure and reverted to old behaviors. The field simply followed that instruction. Waiting also reveals attachment. If stillness creates anxiety, it points to an identity that relies on outcome for validation. This is not a problem to fix. It is information. When this attachment is noticed without judgment, it loosens naturally. Coherence strengthens as dependence dissolves. The field does not reward patience as a virtue. It responds to the stability patience creates. Calm waiting sends a signal of trust. Trust is not belief. It is the absence of internal argument. When there is no argument, the instruction remains clear. There are moments when action is required, and moments when stillness is required. Both are expressions of alignment. The mistake is assuming that only movement counts. In quantum interaction, stillness often carries more power than motion. When you stop trying to escape the pause completes itself. When you stop watching the clock, timing resolves. Waiting is not something to endure. It is something to understand. And once understood, it no longer feels like waiting at all. Contrast is not punishment. It is calibration. Before clarity can stabilize, it must be refined, and refinement requires differentiation. Contrast exists to sharpen perception, not to test worth or endurance. When reality presents resistance, it is not pushing against you. It is outlining the edges of alignment with precision. Most people interpret contrast as evidence that something is wrong. They assume difficulty means misdirection or failure. This assumption adds judgment to the experience, which distorts the signal. Contrast itself is neutral. It only becomes painful when it is resisted or personalized. Resistance highlights what is not aligned by creating friction. Friction draws attention. Attention clarifies preference. Without contrast, awareness remains vague. You cannot know what resonates without feeling what does not. The field uses contrast to bring specificity to identity, not to delay outcomes. When resistance appears, the instinct is to fix, escape, or override it. But contrast is most effective when it is observed without judgment. The moment judgment enters, emotion contracts and identity destabilizes. The signal becomes noisy. When judgment is removed, contrast becomes informative rather than overwhelming. Contrast often appears as repeated patterns. Similar situations, emotions, or obstacles seem to arise again and again. This repetition is not punishment. It is refinement. Each repetition invites a subtler response. Each encounter offers an opportunity to relate differently. When the response shifts, the pattern dissolves. Alignment is not found by avoiding discomfort. It is found by understanding what discomfort is pointing to. Resistance reveals where expectation, identity, or attachment is still operating from an outdated orientation. This revelation does not require action. It requires recognition. Those who understand contrast do not rush to change circumstances. They look inward first. They ask what state is being mirrored. Not as self-blame, but as calibration. This inward attention often resolves the contrast without external effort. The field reorganizes once the signal clarifies. Contrast also builds emotional precision. Without it, expansion would feel vague. Through contrast, expansion becomes unmistakable. Ease feels earned not through effort, but through clarity. The system learns what alignment feels like by briefly experiencing what it is not. Judgment collapses this learning process. When resistance is labeled bad, it is pushed away before it can communicate. The message is lost. The pattern repeats louder. What was meant as guidance becomes struggle. Not because the field insists, but because the signal was ignored. When contrast is allowed, it often resolves quickly. Sometimes it dissolves internally before circumstances change. Other times circumstances shift first. The order does not matter. What matters is the absence of internal opposition. Acceptance does not mean liking the experience. It means not arguing with its presence. Contrast is not a detour from alignment. It is alignment in motion. It is the system fine-tuning itself through feedback. The 1% does not fear contrast. They recognize it as part of the calibration process. They do not dramatize it. They do not suppress it. They let it do its work. When resistance is met with neutrality, it loses its grip. When clarity sharpens, alignment stabilizes. Contrast then has no further function and naturally fades. It was never there to stop you. It was there to define you more precisely. Misalignment feels heavy because it is meant to. The weight, the fatigue, the frustration are not random byproducts of life being difficult. They are protective signals. They exist to slow you down before deeper incoherence sets in. When identity drifts from alignment, the system responds by increasing density, not as punishment, but as guidance. Heaviness is resistance made perceptible. It is the body translating internal contradiction into sensation. When what you are doing, thinking, or identifying with conflicts with your deeper orientation, energy no longer circulates freely. Movement requires more effort. Motivation drops. Tasks that once felt neutral or even enjoyable become draining. This is not laziness. It is feedback. Fatigue appears when consciousness is split. One part of you is pushing forward while another part is pulling back. Maintaining this internal tension consumes energy. The system is not designed to sustain contradiction indefinitely. Fatigue forces a pause so recalibration can occur. Without this mechanism, misalignment would compound unnoticed. Frustration arises when expectation collides with reality. Expectation is often based on an outdated identity, one that no longer matches your current orientation. When reality does not comply, frustration surfaces. This sensation is not telling you to push harder. It is telling you that the premise needs to be questioned. Most people interpret these sensations as personal failure. They assume something is wrong with them. This interpretation adds another layer of resistance. Now there is misalignment, plus self-judgment. The signal becomes louder, not because the field is harsh, but because the guidance was misread. Misalignment is not moral. It does not mean you made a bad choice or missed your chance. It simply means that the current state is not coherent with your present identity. Identity evolves. When behavior, thought, or direction does not evolve with it, friction appears. Heaviness is the indicator. These sensations are also proportional. Mild misalignment produces subtle discomfort. Prolonged misalignment produces exhaustion. Severe misalignment produces burnout. Each stage is an opportunity to listen earlier next time. The system is patient. It escalates only when ignored. Heaviness encourages stillness. Stillness allows awareness to return to the present moment. In presence, alignment can be felt directly without analysis. Often, the moment you stop forcing yourself through heaviness, it begins to lift. Not because the situation changed, but because resistance softened. Misalignment also narrows perception. Everything feels harder because attention is strained. When alignment returns, effort decreases, not because circumstances are easier, but because energy is no longer being wasted on internal opposition. The contrast is unmistakable. Those who understand this no longer fear heaviness. They treat it as a signal flare. When fatigue or frustration appears, they do not immediately try to fix the external situation. They check their state. They ask what they are insisting on that no longer fits. This inquiry is gentle, not accusatory. The moment coherence is restored, energy returns. Motivation reappears without being summoned. Movement feels natural again. This shift can happen quickly once the signal is honored. The body relaxes because it no longer needs to slow you down. Misalignment feels heavy because it is designed to stop momentum in the wrong direction. When you stop interpreting that weight as failure and start reading it as guidance, the relationship with effort changes. You no longer push through resistance. You listen. And listening brings you back into flow without force. The moment alignment locks in is rarely dramatic. There is no surge of emotion, no rush of certainty, no sudden confirmation from the outside world. Instead, there is a quiet settling. A sense that nothing needs to be adjusted anymore. This stillness is often overlooked because it does not feel like achievement. It feels like neutrality. Alignment announces itself through the absence of urgency. The need to act immediately dissolves. The impulse to check, fix, or verify fades. What remains is a calm readiness without anticipation. You are available, but not waiting. Present, but not leaning forward. This is the signature of coherence. When alignment stabilizes, internal dialogue softens. Thoughts may still arise, but they no longer argue with each other. Emotion evens out, not into numbness, but into clarity. Sensation becomes smooth rather than jagged. The body feels organized, as if energy is circulating without obstruction. Many miss this moment because they expect alignment to feel like excitement or relief. Those sensations belong to contrast resolving, not alignment stabilizing. Alignment feels ordinary. Almost too ordinary. This is why it is often doubted. The mind looks for intensity as proof and finds none, so it assumes nothing has happened. But something has happened. Identity has settled into coherence. When this occurs, the field receives a steady signal instead of fluctuating instructions. Nothing needs to be reinforced. Nothing needs to be protected. The system is no longer compensating. Stillness is not stagnation. It is readiness without tension. In this state, action does not originate from desire or fear. It arises spontaneously when needed. Until then, there is no discomfort in waiting. Time feels neutral. Silence feels full rather than empty. Neutrality is often misunderstood as indifference. It is not indifference. It is absence of internal resistance. You care without gripping. You are attentive without scanning. You are open without seeking. This balance allows the field to respond cleanly. Urgency is the clearest indicator that alignment has not yet locked in. Urgency compresses attention. It narrows options. It introduces pressure. When urgency dissolves, perception widens. Possibilities that were invisible become obvious. Timing reveals itself naturally. Those who experience this moment often report a sense of quiet confidence without narrative. They cannot explain why they know something is aligned. They simply do. There is no emotional high to cling to, so nothing crashes afterward. Stability replaces fluctuation. Alignment locking in does not mean challenges disappear. It means challenges no longer destabilize identity. External events may still require response, but they do not provoke internal chaos. Reaction becomes measured. Choice becomes simple. This state cannot be forced. The moment you try to hold on to it, it shifts. Alignment is sustained by allowing, not effort. It remains as long as you do not interfere with it by demanding proof or acceleration. When alignment locks in, reality begins reorganizing quietly. There is often a delay before anything visible changes. This delay no longer feels threatening. Trust does not need to be maintained because there is nothing to trust against. The argument has ended. This moment is not an end point. It is a baseline. From here, interaction with the field becomes consistent, not because you are doing something right, but because you have stopped doing what was interfering. Stillness has replaced strain. Neutrality has replaced anticipation. And in that calm, coherence holds without effort. Before stabilization, consciousness looks outward for reassurance. It watches for signs, waits for confirmation, and scans reality for evidence that alignment is real. After stabilization, this habit falls away naturally. Not because proof was received, but because the need for proof dissolves. Living without needing proof is not blind faith. It is quiet certainty. Certainty that does not argue, announce, or defend itself. When identity has settled, validation becomes unnecessary. Reality no longer needs to confirm what is already known internally. The relationship reverses. Inner state leads, outer reflection follows in its own time. Seeking signs creates dependency. It places authority outside of self-recognition. Each sign becomes a temporary relief, followed by renewed doubt when the sign fades. This cycle keeps identity oscillating. The field mirrors that oscillation with inconsistency. Results appear, then disappear. Momentum builds, then collapses. When proof is no longer required, coherence stabilizes. Attention returns fully to the present moment. There is no longer a need to monitor progress or measure alignment. This absence of monitoring is what allows alignment to persist. Identity stops checking itself. Quiet certainty feels different from confidence. Confidence often relies on reinforcement. It grows with praise and shrinks with challenge. Quiet certainty remains unaffected. It does not increase when things go well or decrease when they do not. It simply remains. This state is often mistaken for detachment. In reality, it is deeper involvement without attachment. You care, but you do not cling. You move, but you do not rush. You listen, but you do not wait for permission. Life becomes participatory rather than reactive. Without the need for proof, time pressure dissolves. There is no internal clock counting down to validation. Patience no longer feels like endurance. Silence no longer feels empty. Gaps no longer feel threatening. Everything feels included rather than evaluated. Those who reach this state often notice that external confirmation arrives after they stop looking for it. Not because the field was withholding, but because the signal finally stabilized. Proof arrives as a byproduct, not a requirement. By then, it no longer carries emotional weight. Living without needing proof also changes how challenges are experienced. Difficulty does not trigger doubt. It triggers curiosity. Instead of asking whether alignment was lost, attention turns inward to observe what is being refined. Challenges become informative rather than destabilizing. This state cannot be faked. The moment you pretend certainty, you reintroduce the need to protect it. Quiet certainty has no defense. It does not need to convince anyone, including yourself. It exists beneath thought, beneath narrative, beneath comparison. When consciousness rests here, decision-making simplifies. Choices feel obvious without analysis. Action arises when needed and pauses when not. There is no internal debate about whether something is right. The body registers coherence immediately. This is not indifference to outcomes. It is freedom from dependency on them. Outcomes still matter, but they no longer define identity. Identity defines the relationship to outcomes. Living without needing proof is not an achievement. It is a side effect of recognition completing itself. When the argument ends internally, reality stops needing to participate in it. Confirmation becomes optional. Alignment becomes stable. And consciousness moves forward without looking back for reassurance. Reality does not reorganize at the same speed that identity stabilizes. This gap is not a flaw in the process. It is a natural consequence of how consciousness and physical systems interact. Inner state shifts instantly. External structures require sequencing, coordination, and timing. What feels like delay is actually translation. When alignment stabilizes internally, nothing may appear to change at first. This neutrality often feels anticlimactic. There is no feedback loop, no visible confirmation. The temptation at this stage is to interfere. To test. To reassert control. This is where many destabilize the signal without realizing it. The field does not move incrementally in visible ways. It reorganizes beneath the surface, out of view. Variables adjust. Connections realign. Timing recalibrates. This activity is silent. From the perspective of the mind, nothing is happening. From the perspective of the system, everything is. Sudden shifts occur because reorganization completes all at once. What looks like an overnight change is the result of a long, unseen process reaching coherence. Reality does not ease into new timelines gradually. It snaps into them when enough conditions align. This snap is not random. It is precise. Non-reaction during neutrality is essential because reaction introduces noise. When you react to the absence of change, you send a new instruction. Doubt, impatience, or frustration shifts identity away from the stabilized state. The field responds immediately to that shift, delaying reorganization further. Neutrality is not waiting with hope. It is waiting without expectation. There is a difference. Expectation leans forward. It monitors. It measures. Neutrality remains present. It does not anticipate or resist. This allows the internal signal to remain consistent long enough for external systems to catch up. Many people collapse alignment at this stage by seeking reassurance. They look for signs, comparisons, or confirmation. Each search subtly alters identity. The signal fluctuates. The field responds accurately to that fluctuation. The individual concludes that nothing is working, unaware that the interference is internal. When reality starts catching up, it often does so in ways the mind did not predict. Opportunities appear from unexpected directions. Situations resolve without direct involvement. Old obstacles dissolve without confrontation. This unpredictability is a sign of coherence, not chaos. The system is no longer being micromanaged. Those who understand this phase remain still even when nothing appears to be moving. They do not rehearse outcomes. They do not narrate progress. They trust the absence of friction as evidence of stability. This trust is not belief. It is the absence of internal resistance. External reorganization can feel sudden because perception catches up all at once. One moment nothing is happening. The next, everything is different. This shift can feel disorienting if identity has not fully settled. For those who remain neutral, it feels natural, almost obvious in hindsight. The lag is not something to endure. It is something to respect. It protects coherence from premature action. It ensures that when reality does move, it moves cleanly. Without the lag, identity would not have time to stabilize. Outcomes would fluctuate as much as the signal. When you stop reacting to the gap closes. When you stop checking for movement, movement organizes. This is not paradox. It is mechanics. The field mirrors consistency. Neutrality preserves it. Reaction disrupts it. Reality always catches up. The only variable is whether identity remains stable long enough for it to do so. The 1% does not announce itself. There is no display, no performance, no need to be seen or validated. The authority they carry is quiet, almost invisible, yet unmistakable to those who can sense it. It is not dominance. It is not confidence built from outcomes. It is the calm that comes from remembering what was never lost. This authority emerges when identity stabilizes beyond reaction. When consciousness no longer flinches at contrast, no longer chases proof, no longer rushes to control timing. At that point, reality stops feeling like something to manage. It begins to feel like something that moves with you, not because you command it, but because you are no longer resisting it. The 1% does not try to manipulate quantum energy. They do not think in those terms anymore. Manipulation implies effort and separation. What they embody is coherence. And coherence reorganizes reality automatically. When the signal is clean, the field responds without negotiation. This is why their presence feels grounding. Conversations settle. Situations de-escalate. Opportunities align without pursuit. It is not intentional influence. It is resonance. Systems recalibrate around them because coherence invites coherence. Calm invites order. Stillness invites clarity. Non-performative authority does not need to explain itself. It does not argue or persuade. It does not correct others unless invited. It simply moves when movement is aligned and remains still when stillness is aligned. This discernment creates trust, not because others understand it, but because they feel it. Remembered power does not rush. It does not compete. It does not compare. Comparison belongs to fragmented identity. Authority belongs to wholeness. When nothing inside is pulling against itself, nothing outside needs to be forced. Reality reorganizes naturally around stabilized consciousness because there is no interference. Old patterns dissolve without confrontation. New structures form without strain. Timing resolves without being managed. This is not luck. It is alignment holding long enough to complete itself. The 1% often appears ordinary on the surface. They work, relate, and live within the same environments as everyone else. What differs is not circumstance, but orientation. They are not waiting for life to begin. They are not postponing presence until conditions improve. They are here now, fully, without argument. This presence carries weight. Not heaviness, but gravity. Things fall into place around it. Not everything immediately, not everything perfectly, but consistently. The field responds because the signal no longer fluctuates. There is no need to claim this identity. Claiming introduces effort. Remembering allows it. If you have followed this recognition without resistance, then something in you already knows. Not as belief, but as familiarity. This calm does not need to be protected. It needs to be trusted. The 1% is not defined by what they achieve, but by what they no longer do. They no longer force. They no longer chase. They no longer wait for permission to be present. In that absence, power returns quietly, completely, and without ceremony. Share this with someone who needs to hear it before their timeline closes.